Chief, I want to ground this moment in some of your previous experiences because in 1967, during the Detroit uprising, fellow white officers pulled you over. You were in full uniform after an 18-hour shift, and one of them pointed a gun at you and told you you were going to die. They shot at you. You've said that during that period, officers were trying to remove their badges and ID cards so they couldn't be identified. In your testimony to the Michigan Senate, you drew a direct line from that to masked ICE agents today. Can you walk me through that connection?
Oh, sure. There's no question. Back in those days, too, when the National Guard came in and Detroit police officers, they removed their badges and their ID name tags to keep from being identified. And this is what I see, what's happening with those ICE officers across the country. Why do you have to have a mask on? They said, when I testified, they said, well, they want to protect themselves and their families. And my position is, look, as chief of police, I was threatened, my family was threatened, and I didn't wear a mask. And I wasn't afraid to patrol and police the streets of the city of Detroit. Number one, get to know the people that you're patrolling. Get to know them. Number two, treat them respectfully. Treat them with respect. And you tell them what you're going to do. And you cannot be an outside agent that's coming into a community with a mask on and expect people to trust you.
What do masks do to the relationship between an officer and the person standing in front of them? I mean, think about those first 10 seconds of an encounter. You know what it's like to face an officer who doesn't want to be identified. You survived it.
What I see is a person who potentially wants to do something that he or she does not want to be identified in. And on a longer scale or a bigger scale, think about the minority communities in this country and what they have done in terms of seeing people wearing masks. I flash back when I see a person with a mask, my father telling me about the Klan that came to kill him in 1943, the year that I was born in Montgomery, Alabama. And if you speak to most minorities, whether they are white, black, or Hispanic, or Jewish people, the same thing. The Klan, they did these horrible things to them. If a person has told their children that this is what happened to me, and when a person who's wearing a mask, it's a frightening thing for them. And so I flash back to this, what my father told me, and I said, this is not the way to do something. Certainly, you want to protect your life. You want to make sure your family's safe. But establish that trust within a respective community and let the people know that you're there to serve and protect them, not to just do what has been going on in this country.
Well, this is what someone at Michigan Senate hearing said, where you testified that the Klan covered their faces too. So what you're saying is, as someone who's experienced racist violence from fellow officers, that comparison to you is fair.
Oh, there was no question.
I want to think a little bit more about Minneapolis and the way that this is playing out. The Minneapolis police chief made a striking point that his department recovered 900 guns and arrested hundreds of violent offenders in 2025 without shooting anyone. Federal immigration agents shot 3 people in his city in 3 weeks, 2 of them fatally.
Yes.
So are you saying that immigration enforcement should look more like ordinary policing?
I'm saying that they should. That's number one. But number two, they should be trained. All the training that we and law enforcement have gone through, and to try and curb some of the things that have happened to our respective cities, that trust that we've gained throughout the years and years and years, and to have that respect. But when you have these kinds of things in which people are doing the great number of shootings, these officers, these people who come into your respective communities who are armed, and when you see them, the first thing they did was pull their guns and to shoot a person, 10 times? was with the Detroit Police Department for 26 years. And I pulled my gun, I think, a couple of times, but you just don't have these kinds of things. Certainly, there's some bad things that occur, and there's some rogue police officers. But the reality is that most of our officers are trained, and they live by that code. But are these ICE people? Are they trained? And I would venture to say, how long was their training? Was it extensive training? And what kind of background check did they do on the people that are working in these positions? I would venture to say again, when you tell someone you can come to this place and make X number of thousands of dollars that other people are doing, and you can travel around the country and do these kinds of things, are they part of a group? Are they people who have a gripe against people because of the color of their skin?
Well, Chief, critics of law enforcement in America would say, when you talk about training, they would say it's become heavily militarized. And that is exactly the kind of display, the kind of enforcement we've been seeing from federal immigration officers. It looks like a highly militarized operation.
Yes.
And local police are also getting that kind of training. I mean, what do you say to that?
I say that the local police might be getting militarized, becoming more, but they also are being taught how to deal with domestic type situations. And to me, that's one of the most important things. You guys have said to me, I'm going to kill you. I say, yeah, okay, you're going to kill me. Okay, but let me tell you something else. You're going to go to jail. Let's talk the person down from those kinds of situations.
So in other words, federal immigration officers seem to be continuously escalating situations where it is unnecessary to do so. This is, again, another critique of law enforcement more broadly in the U.S. is the notion of de-escalation. And we know plenty of instances where police have responded to people experiencing mental health crises. Yes. And police have escalated things instead of de-escalating them. It's one of the reasons that we're now seeing the rise of social workers going to address folks who are dealing with mental health crises versus just a police officer alone.
Absolutely. That's one of the most important things that one can do. I remember specifically in Southwest Detroit, where it's a large Hispanic population. When I was chief, a person approached me and she said, Chief, what we can do is we can teach officers just preliminary cursory Spanish that they can say certain things. And we instituted those classes. Now I think they're doing that now with more of the Middle Eastern community. Those are things that should be done because we're taking the initiative to make a difference. But when you go, if someone says something to you or you don't understand them, you say, well, they're saying something that's bad, and they start pushing people. No, that's not the way to do things. And I think that the majority of American police, unfortunately, most are not trained the way that larger cities are. But you have a selection of the kind of people that are getting into those fields. I remember as chief of police, we had a guy who had been convicted of, I believe, sexual assault in another community, and he was shopping around for police departments to join. And I remember my inspector, he said, sir, let me show you this. We can't have this guy. We didn't hire him. And I think this is the same thing with people who jump from police department to police department. Now, let's look at those ICE people. I'm not saying that there are those kinds of people who have been brutal in some certain instances, but did they do a thorough investigation into those people who are there? Those are the kinds of things that I would look at if, in fact, I was the person doing those kinds of things.
Chief, I want to think about something that didn't exist when you were running the Detroit Police Department, and that is mass surveillance. You built trust by putting officers on the street, face-to-face with residents. Detroit now has Project Greenlight, more than 850 cameras feeding live to a police real-time crime center covering gas stations, schools, parks, churches, low-income housing, even immigration centers. The Justice Department reviewed the program and found it didn't significantly reduce violent crime. Now, a lot of people are comfortable with cameras and license plate readers when they feel aimed at violent crime. But ICE and federal immigration officers have been using those same kinds of tools to find and track people. In a city like Detroit, where does the line fall between public safety and a surveillance infrastructure that can potentially be repurposed for immigration enforcement?
This goes right to trust. This goes right to trust again. And the reality that, are we going to destroy that trust by doing things that historically or traditionally we just didn't do? And so, are we going to share something with someone about someone? Are they going to we're going to let them view all the information that we have and say, who are these people? What are you looking for? And if you do that, you destroy the trust that we've built up throughout the years. That's a scary thing for me, and I think that if that is being done, we have to be mindful of what is going on and that trust that we build up throughout the years.
Should local police limit data sharing with ICE when the public safety benefit is unclear?
But absolutely, is it public safety or is it something else that they're looking for? And that becomes a problem. A guy who I was testified in the court on him, he had killed I think 9 or 10 people, and he was 19 years of age. And I remember saying specifically that this man, the person who followed him, did so in an unmarked car. The rules of every police department in this country says that you don't chase someone in an unmarked car. And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry." I said that you have a person who, at 19 years of age, had killed 9 or 10 people. That person was in violation of the rules and regulations of the department, but we had to get this person off the street. So he was in violation of the department, number one. Number two, but this person had killed 9 or 10 people. So it was important for this officer to chase this person in an unmarked car. So this is the example I'm giving you is like, is there something or someone that is so bad that person has to be surveilled or something to that effect? If it's not, no, it's not that kind of a situation, not at all.
The common thread throughout our conversation, Chief, seems to be what it takes to build trust and how fragile that trust is between police and communities. And what seems to be emerging consistently in our conversation is that federal immigration officers are hurting the trust that law enforcement at the local level is trying to build. Should federal immigration enforcement be held to the same standards of police? Should there be judicial warrants, officer identification, body cameras, use of force policies?
If you're going to patrol a respective community, in my estimation, you should abide by the rules, the code of conduct within a respective law enforcement agency or a national law enforcement agency.
Should ICE be patrolling these communities?
No, listen, they said that they're there to get the worst of the worst. Now, are you on patrol? Are you there to get those people out? And so the bottom line is, how did you get the worst of the worst out of a respective community? I venture to say that the police officers within that respective community, they might know some of those people. And so if you work with them, you can get things, you can get different kinds of information and relieve the tensions that potentially are there.
Did you work with federal immigration enforcement during your time with the Detroit Police Department?
No, I work with the FBI primarily and DEA, but never immigration enforcement, no.
I mean, ICE is a relatively newer agency,
Yes.
but of course there were officers who were focused on immigration during your time as well.
But there was never a point where someone came and doing what they're doing now. I'm sure that they probably arrested people or moved people out. But no, no. So when I retired as chief of police, I went to teach at the University of Detroit Mercy. And this one day, this young lady, she walked into my office. She said, "Dr. McKinnon, can I speak with you?" I said, "Of course you can." So she said, "Let me tell you something, sir." She said, "I'm an illegal." I said, "Oh, I no one had ever done this before."
She even used that term.
She said, "I'm an illegal." She said, "My dad brought me here when I was 1 year old." And she said, "A sister who was born here, and so she's legal, but my mom and they're illegal." She says, I'm saying this." I said, "Do you know I was the chief of police and you're a law enforcement officer?" She says, "Yes, but I trust you." She says, my dad works every day." And she gave me the story of the dad who would leave every morning at 4 o'clock with three other men. The one man who had the driver's license, he drove the car. She says, "I need help because," and this was a number of years ago. She says, "I need help because I don't want to be sent to jail. I don't want to be sent back to the country that I came from. Can you help me?" I made contact with Debbie Dingell, who was a congressperson, and her husband was, well, actually, it was her husband at the time. And they started them on a path to being legal. To me, think about the trust that this young lady had in me. That's the ultimate of trust. I could have said, "Oh, yeah."